Okay, better do it again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Wow, that sounded great. Okay, a couple questions as we start here. Who stayed up and watched the entire Super Bowl? Okay. How many times did the Patriots quarterback get sacked total? I was pretty sad about that. I would have liked to seen the Patriots win just so Mike Vrabel maybe had a better reputation in Nashville, but hey, they didn't. So he made it to the Super Bowl and was Coach of the Year. So that's a pretty good thing. So thanks for being here this morning. I'm Mindy Tate, CEO of Franklin Tomorrow, and we appreciate you getting up after the Super Bowl and getting here. What was it, 26 million people called out of work today? I didn't think I could, so I didn't, but we're so glad you're here. Thank you to all of our partners. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. We sort of shifted gears a couple weeks ago as the ice storm hit to look at really being responsive and helping people learn more about what the response was and how to be better prepared for next time. So this program is a little bit on the fly, and I appreciate all of these people being so great as to jump in and be part of that. But we have continued support by our friends at Atmos Energy. Atmos is a sustaining partner for Franklin Tomorrow. They're a sustaining natural gas provider in Williamson County, and they've got some materials over there if you want to pick something up. If you have natural gas, or if you're looking to see if you can get natural gas after this event. So looking at that, but Christina Christensen is in the back of the room and others from Atmos, and we appreciate their continued support. Our friends at Pape Dawson, they're formerly Reagan Smith, engineering and design firm here in Williamson County and offices across the country. And Pape Dawson is also a sustaining partner, as is Williamson Health. Greg Broy is here, and he's going to say a few words. And this thing being very loud.
Good morning, everybody. I just wanted to let you know it's Heart Month, and in recognition of Heart Month, I put a few flyers around the room. We're having our special coronary calcium artery screening. It's only $65. It's available all month long. You just need to give us a call. Take a look at the flyers around the room if you'd like some more information. Also, in light of today's program, I would be remiss if I didn't recognize the many people at Williamson Medical Center and the Williamson Health System who stayed to help keep our system operating, whether it's our nursing, emergency medical services, maintenance, the people who clean the rooms, our nutritional services. Everybody was an essential worker, and we appreciate them showing up. So on behalf of Williamson Health and our team, thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you to Williamson Health. And then our presenting partner for Frank Talks is Renaissance Bank, and Diane LeBlanc is here. They're just down the street. And I'm going to give the...
Good morning. Thanks for being here so early on a Monday. And we're moving on from football to soccer. And next Saturday, gearing up for our first game against New England Revolution, and we hope you'll come out and join us. Renaissance is the jersey sponsor again this year. Lots of great things going on for soccer in our city, and we're proud to be out there with those boys in gold. And Renaissance is over a 100-year-old bank. We are, right as Mindy said, on Carruthers as well as downtown Franklin. We'd love to help you, and we hope that it's a great season. Thank you.
Maybe next time we can give a jersey away or something fun like that. She mentioned Carruthers, and so I want to say a big thank you to our new friends at Ugly Bagel. If you had a bagel this morning, Ugly Bagel, they have a shop in downtown Nashville and recently opened in Williamson County on Meridian. And they called and wanted to provide bagels this morning, and we were pretty excited and thankful they wanted to do that. And I'm very thankful they did because I didn't get to have breakfast before I left the house. So we appreciate Ugly Bagel, Jeff and Jake. So great. Vanderbilt University Medical Center is also a partner with us for presenting Frank Talks. Our coffee sponsor is Lion Leadership Group, McDonald's here. They are ever reliable, and I thought my friend Deb Varallo was coming today. They know her when she comes through her McDonald's. They know exactly what her order is. She doesn't even need the mobile app. So there's the Ugly Bagel logo, and you can look that up. So, as I said, we wanted to focus on kind of preparedness. Let's see. I know some of you, I've spoken to some of you this morning who were without power during the storm. If you were without power for more than 7 days, raise your hand if you'd be willing to do that. So 5 days. So it gets a little boring a little bit maybe. And maybe part of being prepared is visiting your friends here at the Williamson County Public Library. We're very thankful to them for letting us have use of this room today. And Jessica Jeffers, our library director, is in the back of the room. But Debbie Reschke, is Debbie, there she is. Like, I lost you, Debbie. She's going to talk to you a little bit about how to be prepared without electricity, but still be entertained.
All right, thank you. My name is Debbie Reschke. I'm the Volunteer Outreach Coordinator for Williamson County Public Library System. And we have, first, I hope everybody in this room has a library card. And if you don't, you can get one on your way out today. Because we have lots of different things that you can use at the library if you go out of power, to keep your kids busy and to keep you sane if the power goes out. For those parents who don't like screens, we have the Wazoodle. It is a screen-free device. It has all kinds of podcasts, different kinds of games and entertainment. So that's a big plus. I know a lot of parents don't like screens right now. We also have our Playaway, which is already a loaded up movie. You don't need to have electricity or Wi-Fi to use it. They're already pre-recorded movies that you can check out. And we also have our launch pads. Everything is already preloaded, lots of educational games that your children can play that will keep them busy. So that's another plus. If you know the storm's coming, come on in. You can check these out for, I believe, 2 weeks. 2 weeks. For the parents, we have audiobooks, we have ebooks. All of this stuff you can download ahead of time. As long as your phone or your iPad is charged up, you can continue to read the whole time you're stuck in the house. I loaded up as many books as I could, which was 10 audiobooks. And so I was set. My husband was going crazy because he couldn't, actually we didn't lose power. My son lost power for 6 days. He had to come stay with us. It was not pretty. But he survived because we had Wi-Fi and he could still read and listen to his audiobooks. We also have books you can check out ahead of time. I believe you can 40 books. You can check up to 40 books out at a time. That way you can get books for yourself, for the kids, keep them busy. A lot of times we have reading lists depending on your children's grade level that you can come. They're in the library, good references. And we also have little play sheets that you can come pick up, keep them busy while you're at home. I know during winter break, we had a winter break kit to keep the kids busy. So, if you know this is going to happen again, stop by the library, stock up. We'll give you everything we've got to keep those kids busy. Once the storm is over and you still don't have power and the library is open, we have charging stations. We have computers you can use to get access. Wi-Fi. We have a playroom sponsored by Atmos Energy that we love that is for children 0 to 5 years old. We average about 7,000 kids in there a month. So it's a great place to go when it's cold, when it's hot, when it's raining. The kids can come in and play, and we also have all kinds of different programs for the kids too to keep them busy. So make sure you're ready and prepared next time. We think we're going to get another storm and you may lose power. Make the library your first stop and load up on all the different programs that we offer. Libby, Hoopla, all of those great programs that are free with your library card. So make sure you get your library card.
Thank you, Debbie. I was just looking to see, I was trying to skip the line this morning on Libby to see what book was out there that I could maybe grab, but I waited. You can't get anything at 9:40. It's better to get on there at 6:40, and you might get the skip the line lucky book checkout. But love Libby and love the library, so thanks so much for that, Debbie. Also, we are going to start with Williamson County EMA, which is kind of an featured today. We have Williamson County EMA, Franklin Fire, City of Franklin Streets Department, and Robert White with Middle Tennessee Electric. So we're going to start with Jill. I'm handing you the clicker, and I'm going to hand you the microphone. And thanks so much for being here this morning.
Thank you, Mindy. My name is Jill Bergen. I'm the External Affairs Officer with Williamson County Emergency Management Agency. My boss, the county's Director of Public Safety, Connor Scott, is here in the back of the room. And we appreciate the opportunity to talk about this. We think it's timely all the time, personal preparedness. But I always have to start off a conversation about EMA by clarifying that I don't drive the ambulance. Those are our partners at EMS. So that is a very different skill set, and we are thankful for them. But the Emergency Management Agency, the best analogy I can give you is if you are planning a potluck dinner, you want to make sure that you don't have folks show up with 10 desserts and no entrees, although that might sound great to some folks. But we are those folks that will host the dinner, give you the plan to help get all the resources together to make it a great event, and work with the partners that will bring those skill sets and resources to get through that situation. So this photo is a picture of our 911 dispatch center on the left that looks down over our emergency operations center. The public safety center is located just down the road off Beasley Drive. If you have ever seen that Market Master Market on Columbia Avenue, you turn down that street and that's where we are. We have, we never close. I'm on call 24/7. Dispatch, of course, is on the job all the time, ready to serve. So real quickly, simply stated, so we coordinate that county effort, and we were really fortunate that the partners that we work with here in the county with all the different cities, very capable and cooperative. You know, everybody just wants to get the job done, which is a great thing. And we do a lot of the planning beforehand, of course, and then during some of the management. But the recovery period that we're heading into now is also important as well. That's a photo of our EOC there at the Public Safety Center. We really want everybody to be prepared, every business owner, every resident, every organization to know how to prepare for, respond to, and then recover from a disaster. So we do focus on the 5 phases. Mitigation, which are stuff that, you know, the boring stuff that nobody wants to talk about at those city meetings, where your stormwater management, things like that, you're trying to avoid lessen the impact of a disaster. Prevention, preparedness, which is being ready, of course. The response, which is what most folks think of when they think of emergency services. And then recovery, which takes a lot longer than a lot of folks would like, but that's just the way it works. So we have a countywide effort, of course, with all of we work with the cities, hospitals, health departments, our utility providers, can't do anything without them, nonprofits, faith-based organizations, volunteers, and then, of course, amateur radio operators, which are that hidden network there that really helps us out, and private sector, which is key. Y'all know how important the business community is when it's something like this happens. Oh, and state and federal folks, too. Our EOC has been activated since the Saturday before the storm really hit. We've had folks there every day since. A lot of our staff slept in the building. We just really, we've got folks that live far out as well as in town, but we really wanted to be able to be sure that we were here to serve. And some of y'all may recognize this logo, the Civil Defense logo. Initially, we were Office of Civil Defense, and then in 1984, when TEMA was organized, there was a effort to sort of coordinate everything through the state level down to the counties, and so we became Williamson County EMA. So with personal preparedness, this is what I really hope that we can focus on today. We can't always prevent that disaster from happening, but you want to control what you can control, and you are your most effective, the most effective method for helping others. You can't help others unless you're helping yourself first. So it's kind of like that speech they give you when you're on a plane. Put your own oxygen mask on. Sometimes, as some of you may know, it may be a few days before folks can get to you when there's been a tornado or if there's a flood. So you want to have at least 3 days worth of supplies to sustain yourself during that time. We like to talk about the PACE plan. So our first step really out of 3 is to stay informed. The PACE plan applies in business, but it applies in emergency services, especially with primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. You want to think about a lot of different things in your life according to this, really. So let's think about if you're trying to get to work, your primary mode to get to work. Let's say you go up I-65. Oh, but there's a wreck and the interstate's closed, so you take your alternate routes. You hear that a lot. But then there's something happens that makes the emergency worse, and you need to go into a contingency plan. So let's say you have a friend who picks you up and takes you to work, and then you get to that emergency level. It's definitely not ideal. You might have to walk to a safe place, something like that. So you have to think about everything in terms of that primary, alternate, contingent, and emergent situations. If you're one of those folks who does everything on your phone, all your passwords are stored on your phone, if you have young adult children who don't know how to navigate without an app, those are the most vulnerable folks. When we have an outage, like we've had recently, you want to have backups for your backup. So PACE plan is really not just plan B, but all the way C, D. Think about your life in those terms. In terms of staying informed, we want you to have at least 3 ways of getting emergency notifications. These are just some of the options. Of course, most common TV news, outdoor warning sirens, phone apps. But you want to have your notification. You don't want to just say, "Well, I've got a phone app and I can get emergency text." Okay, but that's still your phone. You need to have some other methods as well to get those notifications. We do have an emergency notification system here in the county where you can receive texts. We don't use it for just everything. We only use them in terms of emergency, so it could be a missing person in your area. If there's a road closure that's going to be significant, evacuations, things like that. It is on our website if you don't get this QR code, but you can go to williamsonready.org and get all of the information I'm sharing with you today. And again, alternate emergency communications methods. When it really hits the fan, we may have to employ some of the door-to-door, which we did have. We did go through some door-to-door notifications over the weekend, especially up in Brentwood and Sneed Road area, when we were trying to make sure that folks who had not had power for all that time were cared for. And then another way of being informed is to know what are the most common hazards here in Williamson County that we face. Of course, volcanoes and avalanches are not at the top of our list, but you probably wouldn't be surprised to see the flooding is up there at number 1, tornadoes and severe storms, and then here's that winter weather and freezes. That is a significant event, as we all know now, that has to be taken seriously when those weather folks start predicting it. And then going on through extreme heat, the geologic hazards. We are actually, with earthquakes, we're located between 2 fault zones, and I know that may be distressing for some of the folks who moved here from California, thinking they wouldn't have to deal with that anymore. Even if we don't have a direct effect of the New Madrid fault zone, we may end up getting folks coming from that area if there's a significant earthquake in West Tennessee, trying to evacuate here. So it would affect our systems too. Communicable diseases, I think 2020, we don't need to really talk about that today. Hazardous materials release with the I-65 bisecting our county, 840, and then also rail lines going through. You need to be aware of how close you are to those transport methods and when there might be a possibility of a hazardous materials release in your area. Infrastructure incidents and also terrorism. It's a lot of heavy stuff for early in the morning, but it's just part of what we do. After you are informed, we want you to create that emergency plan, and it needs to fit your family. You want to think about how you get warnings. Do your children understand what to do in an emergency? Do your children know what your job is? Do they know, your first name? It's some of the younger kids, sometimes they get in a panic and they can't remember the things that you think, well, of course they know that. It's those little things that you want to make sure that your plan fits everyone in your household. Do you have anyone with special needs, with mobility needs? How are they going to fare during an evacuation? Or are there medications that people have to be on that you need to have stocked at all times? Make sure you have that emergency kit updated. And pets, we don't want to forget our pets. And then you want to take action. So when you sign up for those emergency text alerts, when you receive an alert, be ready to take action. Don't take long to wonder. I think now, if ice ever is in the forecast, folks will be quick to start that process to prepare for that. Check your emergency supplies. And if you can, find ways to help others. Of course, friends and relatives, neighbors who are nearby that may not have the network that you have of support. Do you have an emergency kit? So there's a difference between an emergency kit and a go bag. You want to have supplies to sustain yourself. I think we all are a little more familiar now with ways to eat and maybe to even get heat when you don't have the typical systems. But a go bag is also if you have to leave quickly, if there's a fire in your home, or if you have to evacuate for whatever reason. You want to pack a go bag for each person so that they can have those essentials. Have alternate protected copies of your identification, maybe insurance papers, things like that, that you might need to grab quickly. And then get involved. Really, that's the key. Is if y'all are here, you're already taking that step, but help prepare yourself, your family, business, and community for possible emergencies. Go to the citizens academies, come to events like this, bring a friend next time so they understand who is doing the jobs that we're talking about when we talk about response, and communicate with neighbors. That's really a huge thing. This is our motto. We've got a many hazards, one community, many goals, but one mission, many people, one program. Your EMA here is very locally driven. These are local folks responding. We are in touch with FEMA and TEMA, but that is really during the recovery period is when that happens. So your responders are going to be your neighbors. And I do talk about a lot of heavy topics, but I like to end on a positive note. This is a quote from one of the founders of the Boy Scouts of America, who said, "It's fear that turns the passing experience into a final tragedy. Keep cool and all will be well. Use what you have where you are right now." And that's really what we want. We want folks to take stock of what they have, where they are, and so they can get through those emergency situations.
Thank you so much, Jill. I wanted to just ask you a quick question. We've got folks here from United Way of Greater Nashville, Debbie Rainey and others. You work with them. So it goes beyond the actual disaster itself. So 211, some other things. But talk just briefly about the warming shelters that were opened at Franklin and Fairview High Schools and then at Brentwood Martin Center.
Standing up a shelter, we did the Fairview and Franklin shelters in about 4 hours. It was really a great coordinated effort. And I have to tell y'all, we couldn't do it without the volunteers. And honestly, the groups like United Way and Hands On that organize volunteers and can help train them, I mean, we only have about 15 people on our staff. But those folks, that is a huge job, and we really appreciate that effort. We have the Franklin Fire Department. They had folks in our EOC during the response, and they were on the go, ready to go at any moment to deliver cots to the shelters, even transporting folks when necessary. Williamson County Sheriff's Office was that hidden key that kept everything going. They were actually driving to people's homes to rescue them, to take them to shelters when it was in the heat of the moment there with the storm conditions being as bad as they were. So that network is invaluable, but the volunteers and going into recovery, that's going to be a huge step. It does take patience to get everything organized, and you have to be safe. You can't just have folks show up with chainsaws. You want to be safe about it. So we appreciate their work, their help with that.
So United Way of Greater Nashville serves Williamson County. Debbie Rainey, raise your hand. Debbie's been a long time person at United Way, but also a great community member. And you can find resources there, not just for Metro Nashville, but for Williamson County. And we're excited to be working with them to also bring hands-on to Williamson County in a way that volunteer efforts can be available to people to get engaged in. And that'll happen this spring. And so be prepared. That's what we're starting with this morning. And now I'm going to pass it to Glenn Johnson, with the Chief of the Franklin Fire Department.
Thank you, Mindy. Good morning. I'm Glenn Johnson, Fire Chief, Franklin Fire Department. I've had the honor of serving this community for going on 32 years now. During those 32 years, we've encountered several large-scale emergencies during that time, and I can tell you it never ceases to amaze me the way this community and our public and private partners come together to ensure that we have the best outcome for our community that we can have. So, we're very proud of our partnerships and the community for embracing us and engaging us the way they do. I'm going to give you kind of a brief overview in the emergency services in the fire department. On these 5 days, we answered approximately 246 calls for service. In our normal world, it's usually more medical calls than service-related calls. This event, we had more service-related calls. Most of it were dealing with ensuring our citizens were protected for lines coming down, trees on top of residences. And I think my first call, Marquise, if he's here, he was my first call for a tree on a house over in Orleans Estates. So we were able to get out there and get that mitigated, and we hit the ground running. So over the course of those 5 days, we averaged approximately 49 calls each day. So, what do? We knew this thing was coming in. As Jill said earlier, we take proactive measures to ensure that we're staffed and able to respond to our community when it does get in severe conditions. So some of the things we did, we increased the number of units that we had on the street. We made accommodations on some of our smaller SUVs to answer our medical calls, to keep our larger apparatus off the road. And then one of the biggest things that help us in our response is Jerry Hatcher and his team from the streets department had their hands full keeping our entrances clean at the fire department, because if we can't get out, we can't go. And Jerry and his team always ensured that we were there ready to go. Fortunately, all of our fire stations have backup generators, and so we were monitoring those. We only had one fire station lose power, Philstone Farms area, and it was for a short time. But we always want to make sure we were able to, because we don't get to go home. We run a 24/7 operation. So, we made sure we messaged out to our firefighters, the men and women of the department, that, hey, when you get here, we don't know how bad it's going to be. And it may be a while before you go home, because you can't go home until you're relieved. And so we took a stance of ensuring that each of our personnel had 72 hours to self-sustain. And a lot of that support came from our county EMA, by the way of making sure we had MREs if we did have to feed our personnel. And then after the fact, yeah, that's what we said. So most of them came in. They went to Kroger before the event, and I'm pretty sure we were a contribution to all the shelves being empty. The MREs it worked great. But as we start winding down, we work with our county partners, and we were using our Esri Survey 123, which is a platform that allows our firefighters, when they're out riding around, if they see a tree on a house, they can note it. And then so we can kind of track the damage, the amount of damage, and then we turn that over to our city emergency management as well as our county. Okay, all right, good. Our operational response, like I said, some of the things that we did was turned our SUVs and brush trucks into fast response vehicles, because they were able to get out the door and get to our customers and kind of give us a size up before our larger apparatus could get there. One of the big problems that we have in this community in freezing weather is impaired sprinkler systems. We have a deep freeze like we do, so we have to be prepared. And so we have a list of businesses that are what we call the ones that usually freeze up. So we call them 2 or 3 days, a week ahead of the time if we know it's going to get bad, and kind of make sure that they've got measures in place to deal with any type of impairment. As Jill mentioned, and Mindy, the warming shelters were a big thing. We work very well with our county partners. Franklin Fire helped support the shelter in Fairview. by providing a shelter manager, and we also provided transportation of cots and any type of other supplies that they may be needed. We also assisted with the Franklin High School shelter, where we helped set up cots and helped. We didn't manage that. I think our partners at the Williamson County School System managed that shelter, and we had a great response to that. One of the bigger things that we had go on was in our neighbor Brentwoods area, where 62 residents from an assisted living facility had to be relocated to a local church, and that was a big undertaking. So we helped support that by providing manpower to undertake that mission. Well, when you open up one of these shelters, well, we got to feed people. And so one of the things that we look at is when we open up warming shelters is, do we have the ability to serve these guests? And so are we partnered with One Gen Away? The county coordinated the food, and our firefighters, along with county EMA, went out and helped deliver that to the shelter and ensure that they were being able to be cared for during that duration while they were there. In addition to just supporting the community, we also support our other partners in the fire service. On January 26th, we responded to the Sneed Road area to a large residential fire. Luckily, no one was home. The family had lost power and had moved to a hotel. And so due to the conditions, it took a while to get there. I mean, all of our resources were spread thin, but because we had taken that proactive approach and staffed up, we were able to help support them. Also, this goes back to the 62 residents, some of the ways we supported them. So here's our little friend, the lizard. My wife is the animal control director for Williamson County, and so we had a little bit of a challenge on where we're going to put this guy. Because when we think about pets, we normally think about, dogs and cats, and so one of the lessons learned during Hurricane Harvey down in Texas is people won't leave their homes without their pets. So we had to establish standards. And so our standard was anything with shoulders we could take, no stakes. Yeah, no, we're not going to have no snakes in there. So, like I said, so, it's all hands on deck when it comes to this. When the ice starts melting, people start getting antsy and they want to get out. But one thing I will say, and hats off to our county and our city communications teams, they were messaging continuously throughout this event, informing the community, please stay off the road, stay home. And the community did. I mean, we had our utility workers, our emergency services, our fire departments, EMS, we had the roads to ourselves, which was good. The minimal traffic. So my hat's off to y'all for the way you communicated that. So the big question is, everybody's got all these tree limbs down. And now it's going to be like everybody's going to be having a little bonfire out back. The city of Franklin does not have open burning unless it's in small contained areas for recreational. So if you have any questions about having a hot dog roast with your family or whatever, just contact our administrative office, 615-791-3270. And one of the things that we talk about to prepare before the storm, but we always want to make sure we message this on a continuous basis, is ensure that your smoke alarms are working and tested. It's important during emergencies such as this because a lot of people lose their power and they move to alternative fuels in order to stay warm, and that's why it's also important to keep carbon monoxide detectors inside the home and outside of living areas. These are very important because a lot of times people will get a generator, they'll put it too close to a doorway, a window, and that carbon monoxide will start building up inside the residence. So if you do use a generator of any type, make sure that it's well away from the house, not near any windows or anything. And then, we get used to using these little small space heaters. Make sure we got 3 foot of distance between those. A lot of times when the power goes out, we forget about that. We'll pile blankets or close to some of these heaters. Then when the power kicks back on, you forget about it. And the first thing you notice is you smell a little bit of smoke. And so, we want to make sure you keep those areas clear even when there's no power to them. But I'd just like to end on this is, we're very proud of this community. We have strong leadership support, and we couldn't do it without that. And we just appreciate all the things the community does for us.
Okay, good morning, everybody. You still there? Yeah, we're here. All right, very good. Hey, I'm Jerry Hatcher, Streets Department Director. Been with the city about 4.5 years. It's a privilege to serve this community. I want to start off kind of just with some positive comments, just right out of the gate here, and then I'll get into some details. First thing I want to say is great planning helps to ensure great results. And that's a common theme you're going to hear with every speaker here. It's certainly true with the Streets Department. And I'm going to mention too here, I'm going to talk about the streets, but I'm also going to talk about the other public works departments that we have. I'm going to talk about our communication department and also PD. So I will be covering those as well. The second thing I want to point out here, and you've already heard Chief talk about it a little bit here, but interdepartmental cooperation. I'm amazed at how well that our departments communicate together during these kind of events and work together to support each other. And I really appreciate that. The next thing we'll say is safety. All of our guys, you just touched on safety there, Chief, too, and all of our guys worked very hard over a very long weekend, no injuries, only minor damage to a plow. And so that's a testament to the emphasis on safety and our guys doing that and being mindful of that. There's no reported damage. I said reported. If you got any, talk to me after this. No reported damage to private property for anybody been around these operations. There's a few times mailbox or two gets hit, right? Sometimes the car parked on the street, it's hard for us to get our trucks through there. But our guys were mindful of that. So those are 4 things, some things worth noting here right on the front end as I get into the presentation here. Okay, so let me focus on the streets department first. So I just talked about great planning. So we do put a lot of emphasis on that. So the week leading up to the storm, I had a meeting on Tuesday, and then we had a meeting on the Friday, the day before the event. And, I was looking through every weather source I could, contacting everybody I knew that knew anything about the weather, what's going to happen. And you guys know the European model, the American model, they were in conflict with each other. So what do I do in that situation? I plan for the worst. That's what I do. Pray for the best. But so that's what happened. So really, we didn't really know till Friday when I had my last meeting to try to nail down the timing of when we thought this was going to come in. It started with a very large snow event, and then it went to not so much of a snow event, and then change over to ice, and that's what we saw, with those latter reports. But that was a challenge for us in planning. What are we facing? When is it coming in? How are we going to deal with it? Temperatures were a challenge, too. How do we deal with that? Salt starts to lose effectiveness, down to about 16 degrees. So how are we going to deal with that, too? All these things are on our mind as we're doing the planning. We established 2 teams, and this is normally what we do. So I led a team that would work a 12-hour shift, and then my assistant director, Derek McCord, came in to work a 12-hour shift after like that. And so we, just during an event, we'll rotate. We'll just keep rotating until the event concludes. So that's what we did. So as it turned out, the storm originally was going to come in about 12 a.m., but then it shifted to about 5 a.m. So we had to make an adjustment. We were going to go do 12 to 12. So it ended up being, like for me, leading a 5 a.m. to 5 p.m. shift, and then Derek leading that 5 p.m. to 5 a.m., so starting Saturday morning. So we have 8 snowplow trucks and then a one-ton truck that we use during the event. So it's limited resources. I will tell you this, for us, part of that planning was making sure those trucks were set up for winter operations starting in December and January, and then checking those to make sure they're going to operate correctly, during the event. We don't want to take a chance at the last second and equip those trucks and hope it all works. So we put a lot of time. Those vehicles were looked at by the operators and our fleet technicians as well to ensure that everything was going to work properly. So it's a big part of what we did. So the Friday before the storm, so on the 23rd, we put out about 4,000 to 5,000 gallons of salt brine on our road network. And that's, again, an anti-icing kind of measure. It makes that, it's not going to prevent accumulation, but it's going to make it a whole lot easier to clear off the roadways. Be clear on that. We made sure we had 2 or more fleet technicians available that were there. So if we needed service equipment during the event, and there, like Saturday, not a whole lot was needed, but on Sunday, we had some situations where those technicians were there to very quickly take care of those. And that's important because we have to keep those trucks in service, right? We can't use the excuse, sorry, we had 2 or 3 trucks down. We can't get that side of town. We can't do that. And I'll say this too, like when I mentioned the teams, each driver, you know, for each team, they were assigned to a specific truck and then specific routes for that truck. They did a pre-ride on Friday and sometimes before to make sure they knew the routes. So I talked about the safety and no personal or no private property damage. They rode the routes to know where are the obstacles out there, where are the steel plates on the road that stick up a little bit, where are the manhole covers that stick up, where are the mailboxes, where are the overpasses that you don't want to go too fast over so you don't throw the snow out onto the interstate, for example, or into other areas. So all those things, they have to have a unique mindset when you're operating a snowplow truck. It's not just like driving a dump truck. So we took those steps, run your routes before the event to make sure you know what's out there. Because when it's all covered up with snow, guess what? You don't know, right? Until you hit something. And so we wanted to avoid that. So I will say, you know, when I came in Saturday and we had the snow event and it wasn't as much snow as originally was forecasted, it went very well for us. It was easy to remove. When I came in at 5 a.m. on Sunday morning, however, things had changed. So by 4:30, as I was heading in here to work, the freezing rain and freezing precipitation had already started when I got a call for a road report from Williamson County Emergency Management about, I'd say 4:45. My comment was, you know, they wanted a road report. I said, well, the roads are in pretty good shape overall in Franklin. However, I'm more concerned about what's happening with this frozen rain, you know, with the trees. I could already see it and hear it. And so I got into the office and we got our team. We did our shift change. We always have a briefing in between the shift change. So the drivers, and basically we went through this as one driver of one truck. Whoever's going to take the seat in that truck, they're talking to each other, knowing what's going on with the truck, what's going on with your route. So we did that with every single driver. So I want to say it was somewhere just after 7 a.m. on Sunday morning, I get the first call about a down limb or a down tree. That started my, quote, down tree list that I didn't even think about that I was going to need to do. But I had to quickly, these reports coming in, I mean, very rapidly the mission was changing from clearing the roads of ice and snow to clearing the trees. And so we had to do a very quick adjustment. And that was true elsewhere, like with fire and the mission they were doing. They had many things you guys were trying to do and focus on. So basically, very early on that morning, it turned into, and calls were coming in different ways. A lot of them come through PD. A lot of them were seeing. Fire was getting a lot of reports from their own staff and probably external as well. But fire was out there very early on helping to remove debris out of the roadway. So certainly our focus was trees were starting to fall all over. What are we focused on? The primary routes and the secondary routes. Certainly he talked about fire halls, PD, making sure, you know, they had accessibility to their facilities. So basically I started with developing a master list of down trees. And basically as I got those, I was assigning those to, like in some cases fire was taking care of them. Urban forestry with the Parks Department. That's a unit that's got started in the last several years. Lisa Clayton's over Parks. Mike Moynihan is over that particular unit. They did a tremendous job, especially with the larger trees, to help us remove those very, very quickly. And also streets, especially over time, as we were able to clear the roads, our mission was more about turning to helping, was assisting with that clearing effort. So I'm starting the list on Sunday. We didn't have to put a whole lot of salt out on Sunday because it was more slushy conditions. We could push the material off the roadway pretty effectively, which helped us a lot. But we did salt pretty heavy that night as we did a shift change. So going into Sunday night, that helped ensure Monday morning that our roads were, I thought, in overall pretty good shape, which I was very pleased with. Of course, we had a lot of trees still falling on Monday and even after that. And so on Monday morning, our teams shifted over and we're back to full force. So we have the city broken up into 9 zones. And so basically, we have teams assigned to each zone. So we can have full coverage of the city, make sure we're being as efficient as possible. So they go out and they do a network assessment. And with the mission of where are roads that are either partially blocked or blocked in, completely. And so we compile a list of that, and that would be primary routes, secondary routes, and even in the neighborhoods. And certainly, we prioritize those, but if you couldn't get access in a neighborhood, or if it was greatly impacted, that was a priority certainly as well. For emergency services and other things, to get people, that access was important. So really for me, from Sunday to Tuesday, during my times that I was at work, nonstop dealing with the tree issue, getting the resources out there, and then a very quick, efficient response, which I was amazed to see. And so, as I've got a bullet up here, so now these were just the sites of where we had road impacts. So there was hundreds of sites overall, of course, but there were 34 sites. And so if the event being the 24th and 25th and kind of continue with the tree fall after that. But by January 29th, I had 34 sites on the list. 32 were cleared at that point. I think these last two were clear. We had some power lines that were down that slowed those down. So great response as far as dealing with the trees, and then, clearing of the roadways from that team. So let me say too, where's our focus now with streets? So right now we were out picking up the smaller material, especially as sanitation is out there picking up the bulk big material. We're trying to look for smaller branches, twigs, so forth, in the roadway or on the side of the road, picking those up. We're also looking where we went from a cut and clear operation, now it's debris removal. So what we're trying to do now is look for where there's some limbs that may be just on the edge of the roadway, maybe encroaching the roadway just a little bit. We're looking for those so we can cut those back further. So that's a big focus for us right now. So that's an overview of the streets department and effort there. Tremendous job by my team. Grateful for all the hard work. Let me report to you now on the sanitation department. So I mentioned, we went from a cut and clear, and then a lot of the workload is falling on the sanitation environmental services. Nate Ridley's the director, worked with him closely here over the last couple of weeks. So they've got 4 knuckle booms that they have mobilized throughout the city. And so it took till about Tuesday, to kind of get roads cleared and so forth when they really started picking up material. And I want to say this too, to make sure we've tried to get the word out to the public on this, but whether it's an individual cutting up material or if it was an HOA's, it's taking the lead on that, maybe if they're their landscape company, that material needs to be cut down to 6 foot or less. And the better it's piled up at the curb and then really kind of in between the curb and the sidewalk, the more efficient they can be with the pickup. And a lot of people have done that and made it a whole lot easier so we could be more efficient at picking up that material. So again, they've got 4 knuckle boom crews going around town. That's still ongoing work. And I will say, okay, so when can we expect those guys to show up? Well, they're out there, but basically what they're trying to do is they normally would do, like whatever day in your community that the trash service is, they're putting a knuckle boom there that particular day. So like if your day for trash pickup is Thursday, that's when you could expect to see a knuckle boom around. Now look, there is a very large volume, so they're not going to get it in that one particular day. It's going to take multiple weeks. I think people understand that, but understand these guys are working very hard. Within just a week or less period of time, I've got updated information here. As of last Thursday, they were up to, this said 96 loads originally, but 131 loads and 446 tons of material has been picked up, and that'll keep going until we're done. So huge effort by SES that's making a big difference for us. Let me switch over to the Parks Department. So I've mentioned urban forestry. I can't thank them enough. I owe them not just one lunch, probably 2 or 3 or 4. They did such a great job in clearing. So the focus was on our roads, as we talked about, but now there's a big focus on our parks. We had some big impacts in Pinkerton and Jim Warren, Eastern Flank, and the city made the decision there that we were going to have a contractor help us to remove that work. And so there's a company that come in and spent a week here with some very large capable equipment and forces and removed a lot of material. As a result, all of the parks are open. You know, Pinkerton was shut down for a while. Pinkerton's reopened. Jim Warren and Eastern Flank, all of the parks are currently open according to Lisa Clayton. I've got some bullets here to point out some of the facility damage that occurred. So some of that's been resolved, some of that's ongoing. Let me talk about Water Management Department. We talk about preparation, so it took a big effort, and there's a lot of lessons learned before that were applied for water management. So they kind of know as far as the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant, what they need to do to ensure the water continues to flow through there. And that's the challenge, and you see on here, I'll talk about the headworks. The headworks are where the wastewater first comes into the treatment plant. So that's kind of the beginning stage, and you got these big open tanks, and it's removing all the large debris first. So you're trying to keep all that from freezing up. If you got a swimming pool and you look at your freezing pool, and you see the ice that's on it, or you see it in the stream, can you imagine this water too? Even though it's a large volume of water, you got to keep things moving through that whole plant, and that can be a challenge. But they had to take a lot of steps to ensure that things worked well, and they did. And that's just, again, going back to that preparation and what they did before and during the event. So here in this area, we have these big swings in temperature. Look at today. Everybody's excited about the temperature today. And you go, what snow are we talking about? We get this short memory, and we're like, it's all in the past, but it was just a few weeks ago. But basically, they had 3 significant water main breaks that they repaired very quickly. And we were really blessed that it's been pretty mild as far as water mains, which it's, when we're through, streets department that is through, sometimes water's just getting started, because then the thaw's coming, and that's when you're going to have the problems. But so far, we've been spared from too widespread of an issue there. Let me move on to the communication. And so Melissa Ryerson and her team did a great job as far as communicating with the public. They put a lot of pictures, a lot of videos. This is just seeing some snapshots, kind of a collage of a lot of positive response we got directed toward a lot of different departments. And so let's look also at some numbers associated with that. So you can look at some numbers here for Facebook, Instagram, our X account, and look at those huge numbers out there. And I'll kind of highlight the one of the resources that's out there, whether you looked at it during the event or not, is our winter weather guide. And that's kind of a web page on our, that's a page on our website that you can go to get really a good summary of all kind of winter operations information. If you want to find out about trash collection, when is that going to get resumed, debris removal, traffic cameras, information about snow removal, that's all out there on one page. So that's a resource we tried to kind of point to, and a lot of people did check that out during the event. And lastly, here I want to talk about PD. And Chief Johnson talked about the call volume that had come into their department. So there was over 1,100 calls came in from between January the 24th and the 30th. And then you can see the breakdown there of all the different types of calls. So it was a very hectic time for them. They were trying to manage a lot with the resources they had during the time, did a very good job. So I commend Chief Faulkner and her team for handling all of the calls that came in, during a very challenging time. So that concludes my presentation. Again, thanks to all the different departments with the city. It was a privilege to work with them so closely and to help achieve success, with this mission. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Robert Wyatt, and I serve as the VP of Community Relations and Member Services at Middle Tennessee Electric. It is a pleasure to be here this morning and to be part of this discussion. I've been in this industry for 41 years, and so I've seen a lot of outages and things happen. So this storm was very unique as well. I've been at Middle Tennessee Electric for the last 10 years, and it's a pleasure to serve there with our president and CEO, Chris Jones. Today, I'm just going to share a few slides, but I just want to talk with you a little bit about who we are, and it sort of describes why we did the things that we do. Of course, any great organization has a vision statement, or they have a mission statement, and we have our values. But today, I want to focus on what is our purpose, and the purpose at Middle Tennessee Electric is to make the lives of our members better. And you think about the most recent storm we went through. What better time to want to show that, to make the lives of our members better. And so that's what we do at Middle Tennessee Electric. But I also want to recognize United Communications. United Communications is a subsidiary company of Middle Tennessee Electric, and I have some of my United Communication partners here this morning. And thank you for being here. And as I talk through the process that we went through during this storm, United Communications comes into play. Because if we want to make the lives of our members better, it happens because of advancements in technology, and we do that with high-speed internet and great fiber services and infrastructure that we have because of United Communications. So just a little bit about who we are, just to talk a little bit about, let me make sure I get this right here. There we go. Just to talk a little bit about our residential rates. When you think about residential rates in the Valley, most people don't realize that the TVA Valley is probably the biggest consumers of electricity in the country. They really are. Most people don't realize that. But even with all of that, when you look at the average national kilowatt hour rate, nationally it's about 17.47 cents per kilowatt hour. And you think about Tennessee, it's 13.98% cents per kilowatt hour. And with Middle Tennessee Electric, our residential kilowatt hour rate is just 11.13 cents. And we're proud of that. We're proud of the fact that our goal is to keep rates as low as possible. So you think, why in the world would you talk about residential kilowatt hour rates and how it relates to a storm? Well, it really does. Because our goal is to keep our O&M costs low, even in how we respond to storm restoration, so that we can keep your rates lower, even in the midst of a storm. We serve 4 counties. Of course, being in Williamson County, that's what we're here this morning about. But we also serve Rutherford, we serve Wilson, and we serve Cannon counties. And during this storm, the county that was affected the most was Williamson County. So we're going to concentrate there this morning on what that was all about. If you look at the storm accumulation that was projected and actually happened during the storm, look right there in the Nashville area, 0.72 inches of ice. And as each one of us talks about how this storm affected us, it was the ice. And as we talk about, we met several days. We met a week before this storm was even about to happen. And we talked about how best to be prepared to serve our members. And when you think about that, you think about the amount of ice that happened. Now think about how the whole timeline of when it happened. As he mentioned on Saturday, we're thinking, okay, we're surviving pretty good. And we go into Saturday night, and we're still feeling really good. We're thinking that all is well. Then it hit Sunday morning. Now, we as a group met Sunday morning at 6 a.m. And by then, you're right, things had already started changing. You know, went from snow, we having the snow going on, and then all of a sudden, you add snow, and then you see all this rain that's happening, and it's raining really hard. And if it's going to rain really hard and melt that snow, we're cool. But no, it didn't. It rained really hard and decided to get really cold. And then you had the ice. It was a perfect combination of a disaster for us because when you think about a storm, we don't mind snow, but we hate ice. Because in our industry, ice waits. And when you think about what happened during that storm, look at that timeline as we go through the day. By the time we get to 11:15 a.m., we had 26,000 members who had reported outages, or we knew. That's one thing about technology, and you think about fiber with United Communications. We knew when they were happening. Back when I started 40 years ago and we were reading meters, we'd have to send folks out to Bird Dog and walk lines, and we still do that. But with advanced meter infrastructure, as soon as your power is gone, we know. We have what we call an outage management system that knows and it pings when that meter is out. It uses the fiber that we have. We've connected all of our substations with fiber. So we know this. And so by then we had 26,000 members that were out. By 6 p.m., we had gotten that down to 23,000 members who were without. Now, at that point, we're meeting, we're talking about what's affecting us the most. In a lot of storms, most people think that the number of poles is what's affecting the outages. And in a tornado, that's normally the case, broken poles. But it wasn't, as they've all mentioned, trees. Weight of trees falling on power lines. And one of the things that a lot of people are doing in an outage, people forget that we are a distributor of electricity. TVA transmits the electricity. So TVA was affected by the storm as well. As a matter of fact, they had a transmission line that serves 2 substations that serve Williamson County. And because of the enormity of what we serve in those 2 substations, when that transmission line from TVA went out, it took out those 2 substations, then there was no way to backfeed those 2 substations. And so, it really bothers us when we can't make it right. But when a transmission line goes out from TVA that we had nothing to do with, we had a large number of members who were without power because of that TVA. And that's not casting aspersions on TVA. That's just saying that there are times when it's out of our control, and we hate that. Because we want to get that power restored as soon as we can. We want to have the power to do it. And so right there, when you see that 23,000 at 8 p.m. on Sunday, a lot of those were those who were affected by that transmission line that was without. TVA thankfully got that restored late Sunday night. So we were able to get most of those back on. So if you look at that timeline on about 12 a.m. on Monday, we were down to 12,000 members who were without power. And so we go through Tuesday, another 24-hour period, we get it down to 3,600. And then by Tuesday at 9:30 a.m., just 9 hours later, we were down to 2,500 members who were still without power. And remember, these are members who were without power from the storm. And so 2,500 members at that time. Then by Wednesday at midnight, 295 members. And Wednesday afternoon down to 140. And we're proud of that. But that's because we have folks who are committed to meeting and serving members, whether it's our linemen, who are our heroes. But we also had heroes in the engineering department, heroes in the operations department. We had heroes in the member services department, because one thing we have learned in outage communications, if you look at the data, if you look at research, research says that members or customers want to know, number one, that they're out of power. Number two, that you have sent crews to make sure that power is going to be restored. And three, that you can give them an idea of how long they will be without power. And then if you can't get it restored within an hour, can you give me an estimated time of restoration so that I can know how it will affect my life? And then after you get through the storm, can you give me an idea of what happened? Research says over and over, if you will at least do that for your members or your customers, then they're going to be okay. And that's what we try to do. As you look at this here, this timeline, we try to communicate from whether it be communications, and we always say that the best member service person is every single person. Whether it's that lineman at 2 a.m. in the morning, or that person in the contact center when someone calls and says, I've been without power for 3 days and I don't know what to do. Should I get a hotel room? And we're very proud of the fact that by Wednesday, only 140 members who got affected by that storm were still without power. And that makes us very proud. Our goal is that we wish that all of them would have been restored on Sunday. But it was what we call a perfect storm of hurt, because you had snow, rain, freezing rain. And our goal is to do what we can to continue to serve this community that we serve. We love serving you here in Williamson County. We hope that we did the best we could. We're learning. We've already had a meeting. One thing about it, I guarantee you the Seattle Seahawks, the coaching staff is meeting today and trying to figure out a way to repeat as Super Bowl champions. And the first thing we did last week was to have a meeting to talk about what we did good and what we could get better at. And that's what we're going to continue to do as we serve Williamson County. It is a pleasure to serve you. We don't serve you in a way that says that you have to select power from us or that you have to buy broadband services from United Communications. Our goal is to serve you in a way that you would want to. And that's what we'll continue to do. Thank you.
I was in Texas over the summer, and I don't understand the Texas power grid at all, but we are so lucky that Middle Tennessee Electric and now NES have restored in our community. We have such great resources here, and please feel free to ask them a question after the event stops. We were just really pleased and thankful that Robert could join us today. We want to just remind you of a couple things that are coming up. Our next Frank Talks meeting will be March 9th, and I don't mean this to be confusing, but we're going to be next door at the Enrichment Center, okay? So some of you might come here, but we're going to be at the Enrichment Center on March 9th. Also, our Exemplary Community Volunteer Awards are coming up next week, February 18th at the Franklin Theater. You can scan this QR code and get a free ticket. Atmos Energy is going to give you some popcorn and a soda. The concessions will be open at the theater. Come see the good things happening in our community. More than 30 nonprofits or individuals, nominated individuals. We're going to give the most awards we've ever given because the work being done in our community is so exciting. So the doors will open at 5 at the theater. The event will start at 6 o'clock. And Tom Lawrence, what time we get them out of there? 7:55, you think? 7:50, Tom says. But get your free ticket, and then coming up in March, stay tuned. These will be on sale soon. TEDx Franklin coming together, and we're partners in that program that's being sponsored by Wilson Bank and Trust. And the theme is finding your place within your community. And we're going to be focusing on, and go find some information on this, on finding your third place in your community. So we're excited to be part of that. Thanks for attending Frank Talks, and we'll see you over the next few weeks. Stay informed.